You need to break out of that whole cycle of thinking about desire in this way and welcome the Übermensch. The Übermensch becomes this sink for all of their bile, all of their hopes. They can dump them on the Übermensch, and the Übermensch can receive them. In the book, he calls the Übermensch a sea in which you can drown. These people are so craven, so eaten up with their own bile, that they think there's no hope, and he presents the Übermensch as something to which they can direct all of that, cleanse themselves by putting all their energy, libidinal energy, desire, longing on this figure of the Übermensch.
But on the figure, or does he call on them to strive to become the Übermensch in the sense of to overcome all these afflictions that they suffer from?
They do that by changing, this might be worth articulating, changing the register of their desires. It's no longer about a being that they can't have or a being that they can have. It's about becoming. And the Übermensch is this infinite task that can't be achieved. And so all of the frustrations arise from achievement, either actually achieving or not at all achieving, impossibility of achievement. The Übermensch offers a different order, not achievement but becoming. And that is the transition, to see that the goal is, in a sense, goallessness, or that we've been caught up in goals too much, and that's a world of static being, and we need to embrace instead this world of becoming, and that is the figure of the Übermensch.
So there's no way that you're subscribing to any notion that the Übermensch will be an eventual point of arrival with some kind of super race or the kind of privileged aristocracy among human beings, and that it's the Superman in the old sense that it was understood.
No.
Especially by the Nazis who read Nietzsche, no?
Right. The Übermensch is not achievable. No one can be it, but that doesn't mean there are not Übermenschen. There's no Overman. You can only become the Übermensch, and you can continually become the Übermensch, but you can never be the Übermensch. So no, there are, in the strict sense of is, being, there are no Overmen, but we can all, well, maybe all of us, become Overmen, and that's as good as you can do. So this issue arises in talking about Zarathustra himself. People ask, is Zarathustra the Übermensch? Is he not? Most people say no, he's only the teacher of the Übermensch, and he specifies he has two teachings, Zarathustra. He teaches the Übermensch, and he teaches eternal recurrence. We should talk later about how those relate. And so because he's just the teacher, he can't be the figure. But I think no one can actually be it. Being the teacher of it is a way of becoming the Übermensch. And so to me, he is, in scare quotes, the Overman.
Yeah. Well, what he says explicitly when he's referring to the gift that he brings to humankind from the mountains is the message of the Overman, and he says, quoting, "The Overman is the meaning of the earth.
Yeah.
Let your will say, the Overman shall be the meaning of the earth." And that's where he uses the tightrope walker as the figure when he says that man is a rope tied between beast and overman. Man is a bridge and not an end. And then, of course, the people mock him and so forth. So that idea that man is suspended on this rope between a past and a future, I think, leads right into the idea of the eternal return, which, as you rightly say, I agree with you that it's the second main thing that Zarathustra has to communicate to humankind.
Maybe we should talk about meaning of the earth before that.
Why don't we? Yeah.
I think this is where I would touch on gay science as well. The preface to that book describes Nietzsche writing it after a stage of convalescence, which is a key issue in Zarathustra. And there he is overcoming a sickness. But as we hear of this sickness, he overcame it by being exposed to the winds of his recuperation, letting the wind in, cleaning the air, new air, instead of the bad air. The illness he suffered from was precisely the closure of the metaphysical subject, of the Cartesian subject. metaphysics is the illness for Nietzsche. Sickness is metaphysics, believing that you're a self-contained subject, an ego, and coincident with that, seeing yourself as just the thinking side of the ego as mind, distinct from body. So with this advocacy of the ego in metaphysics, and with the thought of that ego as utterly distinct from the body, as pure intellect, we have become utterly sick. That illness, to overcome that illness, is to burst open the bounds of that subject and to re-embrace the body, to re-embrace life, nature, and in so doing to overcome the separation, artificial separation we've put in place between mind and body, which makes each of them as pure as possible, and in so doing sets them antagonistically opposed to one another. The body becomes brute animality. And so to restore the two together is to reinvigorate both of them, put blood into the mind and to give meaning to the body. In so doing, this transformed understanding of the self as no longer dirempted by mind-body dualism, that is the life that Nietzsche advocates in Zarathustra, and I think that is the way we give meaning to the earth. To become the meaning of the earth is to no longer see the earth, the material, the body, as completely devoid of meaning in a separation from mind.
Yeah, I'm all with that. However, I continue to bump up against this scandalon, and I think Nietzsche also did, which is that the body is not merely this thing that metaphysics has excluded from citizenship in the ego, but the body is also the place of deformity, decay, death, and suffering. And many of these people that Zarathustra encounters, these sick people that you're referring to, many of them are cripples.
Yeah.
They have handicaps, and they are poor, destitute, and it's in their bodies that they are suffering the most. And their revulsion against life is not so much, that's the way I see it, that they're enclosed within kind of Cartesian egos. Mm-hmm. Their revulsion against life is that it's the body is the locus of their most intense suffering, and they're not able to say yes to life despite its suffering, in the way that the overman presumably can say yes to life under those conditions.
Well, their abstraction of themselves from the body. I mean, he meets a whole cast of characters, but the abstraction of themselves from their body still leaves them with a body, and that body decays. That body goes unexercised, and so what you have in Nietzsche is this advocacy of, well, this understanding of the body as well. Our bodies determine our thoughts in some way. I mean, this is, if we take Nietzsche seriously, then we have to approach this kind of almost physiognomy in his thinking, this extreme biologism of a sort, this physiologism anyway, where diet shapes how you think, right? There's these scandalous passages that are considered racist, where, the Indians have a certain kind of thought, way of thinking, because they eat so much rice, he says. And we think that's outlandish, ridiculous, racist, blah, blah, blah. But if you understand the body the way Nietzsche does, you have to take these claims seriously, or at least see what is serious in them, that the body and the mind are no longer detached from one another, and there is going to be this kind of influence. Right.
So he is thinking of a new body.
Yeah.
That's what the overman, might be probably one of the best ways to conceive of it is if not a new body,
new senses,
a new way of being in the body.
Yeah, absolutely. And this comes up in the preface to Gay Science as well, where part of the convalescence, the recuperation from this illness of metaphysics, is a restoration of sense. He talks about becoming ticklish, because now the senses are stimulated. They can feel again. They don't feel brute animal senses. They feel meaningful sense of the earth. They're reanimated, and he calls not only for these new senses and the ticklishness of our sense organs suddenly, but also for new organs. There's passages in The Will to Power where you find him calling for us developing new organs, and also for a refinement of the sense organs that we have. That's part of the new body, a new way of inhabiting the body, and a new way of relating to a new world as well.
Right. So you were mentioning earlier about these people who have a sickness, a life sickness, who are looking for redemption, either by the possession of things, which doesn't really address the source of their malaise, or through a transcendent, otherworldly God. And redemption is a crucial concept for Nietzsche, especially in Zarathustra. And in fact, he has a chapter on redemption in Zarathustra, which is later in the book. In fact, it's right in the very middle of the book, appropriately so, because